Right, okay, out the way, Slipsy. You go and lie down, darling. I think we are live. Just need to get myself up on my phone. So hopefully we are going to be live and kicking in a second. Oh, yep, I think we are. Yep, and I can hear Slipper moving around. So, hi everybody. Hope you're all okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, which would be great. Oh, you can hear me, hooray, you can hear me. Oh, that's good news. I always worry that you can't hear me and that you're going to spend an hour just sort of listening to nothing. So today we are going to make a start on this little alpaca, which this is just a rubbish printout, so it doesn't look particularly great, but I'm using my iPad as a reference, and then I'll kind of bring this printout in every now and again just to kind of point out different things. So we're going to be drawing the alpaca on drafting film, and this is the drafting film that I've got here. This is the Grafix 0.005 double matte drafting film, and I'm pretty sure I've got something up on YouTube anyway about the different kinds of drafting film, but this drafting film I think is the best one. I really like this. It's got a warm hue to it, so if you have quite a few pieces that you lay on one on top of another, it actually looks quite red. Not red, but it's got like a warm hue to it. If you use something like Polydraw you can get quite readily on Amazon. You can get it in pads, which is quite good. It's much thinner. This is actually quite thick. But you oh God, blooming messages coming through now. I'll just turn them off. The Polydraw is actually blue hued, so if you put a pile of the Polydraw together, it will actually look blue. And that's quite important to understand because it does change how your pencils look on it. And Polydraw, your pencils look not completely different, but they can look quite different. So your dark indigo Polychromos, for example, can look quite vibrant on the Polydraw. So it's just something to kind of think about, really. And the other one that a lot of people get hold of, which is Grafix, is the Dur-a-lar. Now that is actually a student grade film. I've done a few pieces on it. I really like it, but it's much slicker than the drafting film. It's much smoother. It's still quite sturdy, and it's brilliant for heat. So if you wanted to use, I used a hairdryer on it. If you want to use the Icarus board, that type of thing, it works really well with heat. But the slice tool doesn't work quite as well on it. If you're going to use the slice tool, the best one to use your slice tool on is the Polydraw. The Polydraw is fantastic for the slice tool. Anyway, so I've got my alpaca. If I call it a llama, I apologise. It's an alpaca. I've got him drawn out on my my drafting film here, and what I've done is I've actually drawn him on the back. So I've used graphite and I've drawn him on the back. I flipped my image and I drew him on the back so that I don't have all of the graphite merging in with my pencils on the front. So that's what I've done there. And I've just got a piece of, honestly, it's ridiculous. It's a piece of 500 series Strathmore Bristol plate paper underneath, which costs an absolute fortune. And I just use it to put behind my my drafting film. I should be drawing on it, but it's too smooth for me. So when you're drawing on drafting film, you're better to have a really smooth surface underneath it, because the drafting film will pick up on any of the texture and everything that's underneath. That's actually a real pro if you're wanting to draw something that's got a bit of a texture. So the squirrel that I drew last year, I actually put my drafting film, it was Dur-a-lar that I used, I put it on a table that had got a really heavy wood grain on it, and I kind of worked my pencil in over that and got the wood grain to come through on the drafting film. So it can be a real pro, but it can be a con as well if you weren't expecting to get texture through. So just be kind of aware of that. So the other thing that I want to do is just, if you haven't used drafting film before, I just want to introduce you to a few different tools and kind of what you can expect. So I've got a separate piece here that I'm just going to do some sort of like little twiddly bits and everything on. It's actually a bit dusty. But I just want to show you what the pressure is that you want to be getting on your drafting film. And the best thing to do is to kind of lift the corner of your drafting film up and just sort of have a bit of a draw on the edge. And what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to make sure that your paper's not being pushed down. So if you're sort of going too hard, it's going to push it down. You want to be really, really, really gentle. The more gentle you can be, the more layers you're going to get onto your drafting film. Okay, so I mean, obviously there are going to be times when we go quite hard, but if I just move it up here, we should be able to see. If I just do sort of like a bit of a, we're looking at very, very, very light pressure. Very light pressure. The lightest pressure you can get. Now the problem I always find with drafting film is that if you go in with really, really sharp pencils, you end up with you can end up with sort of like quite a streaky effect. So I tend to prefer using slightly blunter pencils, and the reason I do a lot of textured fur and animals on the drafting film is because I find it really hard to do smooth things. So you would have thought smooth surface, smooth object, no brainer, and honestly it's the opposite. So that's that, and then I just want to introduce you to a few other little tools. So I have my brush. This is just a blusher brush, just a makeup brush, and I can just brush any pigment or eraser, dust or anything like that off. Faber-Castell do a brush. I don't know how much it is, but all you need is like a little, you know, a makeup brush, and that's fine, and you can just brush it off. So I've got my brush, and then I've got my trusty Tombow. So this is the Tombow Mono, and it's the 2.3mm. So it's got a little tiny, you can see there, little tiny edge end there, little round one. And this will be one of the tools that I use mostly in here to get all of my highlights and everything like that. Oops, gosh, sorry about that. That was my kind of my magnets flying off. Yeah, so that's the Tombow. And then I've got a series of slice tools. Let's just make sure that I can see everybody. Just checking everybody's okay. Everybody's gone very quiet on the chat. You're normally chatting away. You're obviously listening intently to what I'm saying. So I've got a few of these different slice tools. I've got this little tiny one, which is the precision cutter. It's got a tiny, tiny, tiny weeny little 2mm blade at the end. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe easier to see it there. Tiny little blade, very, very sharp. I probably won't be using that one today. Just use that for sort of like the tiniest of little sort of tweaks, little highlights, stuff like that. I then have my preferred manual pen cutter. So manual in that it goes up and down and it stays up. If you have one of these and you find that the end wobbles, or if you see these little notches, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, there's two little notches on the back just above the button. Just turn them so that they're not lined up, and then your blade shouldn't wobble about. The lovely thing about this blade is that it's got this tapered blade, so it's like a chisel shaped, and it's got a rounded end. And a lot of people sort of ask me, you know, oh, how do you use the slice, you know, how does it work? And basically what I suggest is, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you hold it upside down in your hand like that, and you turn it round to the left if you're right-handed and to the right if you're left-handed. And what you're aiming to do is you're aiming to scrape on that edge rather than using it like that and cutting. Okay. And these are like safety blades. They're not, I mean, they would cut me if I went too hard, but you know, they're super sharp, but they don't cut. So that's what I suggest. You put it upside down, you turn it to the right, turn it to the left, and then you scrape very gently. And what you're aiming to do is get enough pigment on the film, the paper, whatever it is that you're using, so that you can scrape the pigment off rather than scraping the paper. But the brilliant thing about the film is you can use the slice tool on top of the film into the film surface, and it gives you almost like an embossing effect, and you can create the most amazing textures. So that's the manual pen cutter. And then we have, this is Slice's new pen cutter, and this is the slim pen cutter. They sent me this last week, and this has, now I'm not going to do it because the blade was a little bit wobbly and I had no way of getting the blade to stop wobbling. So what I've done is I've shoved some putty eraser in to stop the blade from wobbling. But what that's done is it stopped me from kind of pulling it down, sort of opening it. But I need it open anyway, so it's fine. And this has got a very similar blade. I think it's the exact same blade. It is the exact same blade as the manual pen cutter. It's just a slimmer design. I love the manual pen cutter. The only thing that gets in the way is the button, and the button ends up going on my finger there and making it a little bit sore if I'm using it a lot. So the manual pen cutter actually sits really quite nicely in your hand, and it's quite nicely weighted, you know, so you can kind of maneuver it and move it about. So that's another one that we'll kind of be looking at as well. Whether we get onto the slice tonight, I don't know. And you'd use it in exactly the same way, upside down, turn to the left, and you scrape on the edge bit there. And then I have my rather disgusting looking kneadable eraser. I've got a new one here actually. This is what they look like in the box. I use the Faber-Castell ones. And this is out of the box. My kneadable eraser, I tend to use the whole thing. I'm not one of these neat people that just nips a little tiny bit off and just uses a little bit. I'm like, no, just get right in there with the whole blooming thing. So I've got the whole thing, and if I need to use it, I'll use it. I'm just going to dab off a little bit of this because I did put just a tiny bit of dark sepia in on the curls here. I'm just going to take a little bit off there. Now the drafting film is fantastic for subtraction techniques, and I think people get a little bit, when you follow my tutorials, you kind of get used to what I do. And one of the things that I do an awful lot is I put loads and loads of stuff in, and then I go in with an eraser and I take it all back out again. and I think people are sitting there going, hang on a second, I've just spent an hour putting all of that pigment in, and you're now telling me to take it all back out again. So if I do that tonight and you're thinking, what on earth is she doing, wasting my time, there's always a reason behind, you know, what I do. And basically what I want to be doing tonight is just showing you, I'd usually start with the eyes, but we've done eyes. We will do the eyes, but I want to work on this curly bit because I think this is going to, I think it's going to be quite fun, and I think you'll if you haven't used drafting film before, I think you'll quite enjoy doing this. Well, I hope you will anyway. But what I want to sort of show you first of all is that when we look at this photograph, we think detail. We think, oh my goodness, crikey, there's so much detail in this. I don't know where I'm going to start. And what you have to try and train yourself to do is forget the detail completely. And sometimes it's even easier if you've got Photoshop to take your photograph into Photoshop and put a bit of a blur on it so that all of your detail disappears, which might sound mad, but then you can't concentrate on any of the detail. All you've got to concentrate on then are your tonal values and your colours. And then you can, once you've got your tonal values and your colours down, you can then switch the detail back on, and then you can start to work on the detail. So that's something that you could try. We're not going to do that with this one because it's not that crazy detail. It's, you know, it's when you've got things that are just like so sharp and so in focus and so mad detail that it's like you just can't get your brain to switch off from it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put quite a lot of solid colour in first of all. Okay, now I know a lot of you are panicking about colour. Deborah, drafting film is really easy to cut. Really easy to cut. I'd always say use a sharp, like a Stanley knife or something like that, and a safety ruler. only because I've cut the end of my thumb off before. So, you know, always use a safety ruler, but you can cut it with scissors. You can't rip it. So if I go to try and rip it, you can't rip it. It's not going to rip. So, you know, you're probably all going, oh my God, drafting film is in such short supply and Bonnie's just creased the whole thing. I could have used that for a portrait, but it's only a little strip, so it's fine. But no, you can't rip it, so you definitely cut it. And Alison, you're using pastel matte, that's absolutely fine. You'll use the same techniques. You instead of using a Tombow, use the putty eraser. That's what I'd say, and go even more gently with your pressure. So yes, so everybody's panicking a little bit about colour, and I understand that, but don't worry about colour. Honestly, colour is so not important. Colour is so yesterday. It's so last year. The colour isn't important. You know, we could be doing this in bright purple. Honestly, the colour doesn't matter. The colours that I see will probably be very, very different to the colours that you see. So all I'd say is if you don't have the same pencils as me, and yes, I've chosen quite a few Luminance because the Luminance do work really, really nicely on the film. But if you don't have these same colours as me, don't fret, don't worry too much. So I'm going to start off with this is a brown ochre 10% Luminance. If you don't have the brown ochre 10% Luminance, you know, you could start with an Ivory. Oops, just getting these pencils out now. So you could start off with an Ivory poly, and then you'd just put a little bit more of the burnt ochre in over the top. So, you know, it's honestly not a problem. And actually I think this whole session is more about technique than it is about colour. So I've got my brown ochre 10% here, the Luminance. You can see it's not sharp. So anybody who knows me will know that I've done, well, I did a tutorial on Fabriano Artistico, and then I've done a portrait on Fabriano, which hopefully I'll be able to share next week. Honestly, I felt like a proper coloured pencil artist because I had super, super, super sharp pencils. I've never had such sharp pencils in the whole of my life. I mean, look at this. I mean, they were even sharper than this. You know, and that's my usual standard. So I felt like a proper coloured pencil artist whilst I was using Fabriano, but I'm back to using film and pastel matte, so I'm back to my blunt pencils. Now, what I want to do, and bear with me if you're watching this and you're thinking the woman's mad, I want to sort of just start to build in the just the curls, and just kind of build quite a lot of colour in there, and then we're going to come back in, and then we're going to take some colour out, and then we're going to put colour in, then we're going to take it out, we're going to put it in, and we're taking. So tonight it's all pretty much like the hokey cokey. So Lucky, will you always work on white when using the film? So I tend to use white behind my drawings. If you are planning on using a different colour behind your film, then always have that colour to put behind it, because if you start working with white and then right at the end when you've finished you put another colour behind it, you might find you need to go in and retouch little bits out. You know, because it can, if you put like black behind it, you might have to go in and really put an awful lot more colour in there, because you probably will miss little bits out on the film. You know, when you hold it up you'll be able to see through it. So right, okay, so I'm going to start, because otherwise I'll just carry on talking, procrastinating, and not actually do any drawing whatsoever. So I'm going to just take out a little bit more of this. So all of the graphite areas that you can see on the paper, on the film, are behind it. And I'm just going to pick a curl, any curl, and I'm just going to make a start. And I'm using nice light pressure, and I've got this curl here, this sort of prominent one, this one here. I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to kind of work around it. Now, I'm not worried about getting the curls perfect. I'm not worried about getting them the right shape. Inevitably what will happen on this piece is I will end up with more curls in certain places and less curls in certain places, and that is not a problem for me. If you are a very controlled artist and you like everything to be perfect, and I know everybody's different, you know, and I'm very slapdash and I'm just like, things just, you know, I make do with stuff. But if you are, you know, a very controlled person and you like to have everything precise, then my recommendation would be to work to your strengths. And your strengths will be to have everything, you know, really, really nicely laid out and perfect. So, you know, don't force yourself to be something you're not, because that's always going to feel a little bit odd. And I'm just going to kind of come in here and just basically vaguely fill in where some of these curls are. We've got some. What pencil sharpener do you use for your Pablos? Laurie, I use the Swordfish Curve. This is the Swordfish Curve. Try not to empty it. It's been on the floor. I think the puppies had it. But this is the Swordfish Curve. And what's really nice about it is it's got a big enough hole that it fits everything. And the teeth, the little teeth bits, have got rubber grippers. So you don't end up with the teeth marks in your pencils. I quite like that. And I don't know why other sharpener manufacturers don't introduce a rubber gripper. You know, they all seem to be metal and you get these little sort of tooth marks. Would it be possible to zoom in? I can. Hold on. Let me just refocus that. Okay, hopefully that's okay. What's the pros of using film compared to paper? What is the texture similar to paper-wise? Also, how would you frame that? Would you put a paper? Those are all good questions, Isabella. So the pros of using film, it's really, really smooth. You don't have to contend with any tooth whatsoever, because it is a very, very different, a different beast to paper. So any paper, even the smoothest ones, have got tooth, and you've got to kind of battle with that a little bit. With the film, there's no tooth. It's got this funny sort of surface texture, which pencil seems to adhere to, and it works really, really, really well. What are the pros? It's just really nice to use, to be honest. You can use the front and the back, so you can add some really nice depth in there. You can put different colours behind it. You can build backgrounds in onto the back. You can have like a background on a different piece of paper and slip it underneath. You know, it is a very opaque surface. I'll just pop this behind it. It's not the exact same size, but you can see that it's, you know, you can put a different colour behind it and you're going to get different effects. So it's a very versatile surface, and it's really nice to draw on. It's very easily erased, and you can use all sorts of different medium on it as well. It's just really, really nice. What's the texture similar to? The texture is smooth. Think glass. That's what the texture is like. It's like glass. And how do you frame it? Well, what you would do is you would put a piece of paper behind it, like I've got here. Make sure it's acid free, and you put backing board behind that. Make sure that the backing board is acid free. I usually use mount board behind mine. And you would either use the little photo corners. You can get those little photo corners, or what I do is I just tape it at the top, and I just use a tape about this long, and I just tape it at the top, because if you try and tape it all down on all sides, you'll get a ripple, and you don't want a ripple. You know, so you need to let the film sort of breathe, if you like. So do you draw flat or on easel? Gina, I'm drawing on a 60-degree angle. So my drawing board kind of flips up. You do seem to have magic pencils, Bonnie. I often use the same paper and pencil in a tutorial. Yours looks fab, mine looks like a fuzzy mess. Deborah, I don't think it does at all. I don't think it does. It feels cleaner and more clinical. Yeah, yes, it does. There is a right... So, Diam, I'm not sure whether I pronounced that right. Not a silly question at all. There on a double-sided, on the double matte ones, there's no right or wrong side. It's identical both front and back. What you might get is a single-sided film, and the single-sided film is exactly that. It's just one side matte, one side shiny. The idea of the double matte is that you can go in on the back and you can create depth on the back. So you are limited to layers. For me, I get probably around 15 to 20 layers if I want to on the drafting film. Half the time there's no need though. You know, if you can get away with 2 layers, if you can get away with 1 layer, do it. You know, but if you need to kind of, like the eyes, we'll probably be putting quite a lot of detail in the eyes. But the brilliantness about having something that's double-sided is I can put the eyes in, I can then flip it and then go really black on the back on the eyes, make the eyes really, really, really dark. You know, which is great. So that's what's really nice about it. You know, you can flip it and use the back, which is good. Now at the moment, all I'm doing is just a bit of scribbling, really. I'm not even following the lines that I've drawn. I'm just sort of looking at my reference photo and I'm just sort of bringing in pencil marks, really, and just sort of bringing in a little bit of colour. For me, starting a piece is really, really hard. And I will procrastinate and do other stuff and chat and all of that type of thing without putting pencil onto paper. Once you put pencil onto paper, it's much, much easier to keep going. And it's just that start, it's just getting started, really, that can be the really hard thing for some people. You know, and if you do find it difficult to start, if you've got sort of like a blank piece of paper or a beautifully drawn outline and you don't know where to start, the best thing to do is just start anywhere. Just put a mark on the paper, you know, and then that'll work. You'll then be able to, you know, start going. So now I haven't used drafting film in about 2 months. So this is the first time of me using drafting film, and it's funny. It's always, you kind of have to get into muscle memory mode. So I've been using pastel matte again quite a bit, and Fabriano. And I can share my lovely grey horse that I've just finished with you at the end of this live feed. The grey horse I've just done has been an absolute, just a joy, an absolute joy. I think I love drawing, and I love drawing anything, as long as it's an animal. But that grey horse has just been just fantastic. You know, so much fun to do. You know. And getting all of those lovely subtle colours and everything in it. Oh, it's just been so lovely. And that's what I love about pastel matte. You know, you can get all of that lovely subtlety in there. So I'm just coming down here. Again, it's not looking anything like, we're just at that, you know, terribly ugly stage. Which we'll probably have for quite some time. Now, the ugly stage, that's something actually to think about. So, you know, as artists, you'll hear people talking about, oh, you always go through the ugly stage. And it's true. You are always going to go through a stage where it doesn't really resemble what you envisaged it would resemble. And I always think it's a good idea to try and make your work look as attractive as possible. Not because we're all vain or anything like that, but because it kind of spurs us on and it makes things look, you know, that little bit nicer. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I like to draw eyes first, because it really, really then spurs me on. It's like this living thing on my drawing board that's peeping out at me, and it spurs me on to kind of, you know, carry on creating, which is, you know, is just lovely. And I think with drafting film, it's a little bit difficult to get something, especially when you're drawing curly hair, like I draw curly hair, to make it look particularly attractive from the start. But you know, if you can do anything to make something look attractive, then do. The other thing to do, which I do an awful lot of, is write a little note to myself on my drawing board. You know, you can't expect to have a masterpiece in just one layer if you're trying to draw realism. It's just not going to happen. You know, so, and you have to keep reminding yourself that, and if you can remind yourself of that on a regular basis, then it's, you know, you don't kind of end up putting things in the bin. because I don't think I've ever put anything in the bin. I've stopped drawing something, and a lot of the time I've stopped drawing something, put it to one side, started it again, and then gone back to the original. You know, so it's always worth not putting stuff in the bin. And then also you can go back to it at a later date and look at it and kind of learn from it as well, which is quite good. So let's have a look. Have you ever completed miniature pet portraits? No, Laura. No, I the smallest I will do is a 10 by 12. That's the smallest piece I will do. I don't enjoy drawing really small pieces. I can't see them. I'll have to get my magnifying glass out. I'm getting old now. And it's just not something that I enjoy doing. You know, and it takes as long to do a tiny portrait as it does to do a big one, but you have to charge less. You know, and it's not all about the money, but it's just I don't want to get into doing those little ones. It's not something that I would ever consider. It's not something I'd ever done, and it's not something I would consider either. I guess it depends on what you're wanting to do, really. I mean, I admire people who do them, but no, it would just be too small for me. This is small enough. This is about 10 by, I don't know how big this is. Well, anyway, but it's not tiny. Use a Caran d'Ache mechanical pencil sharpener, which is very good. Oh, okay, Claire. Is that? Yeah, I think that's probably similar to the Derwent Superpoint and the Swordfish. You can get away with less layers because you are not having to cover exactly, Patsy. Yeah. Oh well, see, Patsy is the queen of drafting film. So you know, she's definitely. If you need somebody to talk to about drafting film and backgrounds, then Patsy is definitely the artist to talk to, because she has the most amazing backgrounds and works almost, I think, exclusively with the drafting film. Will the grey horse go on? No, Deborah, he's a commission piece, so no, he's not. But I'd really like to find one that's similar lighting, where it's gone from very cool colours into sort of like really quite warm colours. It's gone quite blue and purple into pinks, and it works really, really nicely. Oh, that sounds good. A felt animals. I really like that. That's my daughter waving at me through the window. Do you give customers a paper options when you book commissions? I don't, Isabella. All a similar price as well. Pastel matte and drafting film are a very similar price. They get what they give. You know, they get what I choose to do it on. You know, and that's fine. Let's have a look here. Does anyone else struggle with the luminance markings? I need a marking. Oh gosh, I know, Dawn. Well, they started to do them in white. I don't think I've got any here that have got white. The new ones have got white on them, which is a lot better. No, I don't think I have. Do you blend differently? There's a really good question, Hazel. You don't blend. You don't do blending on drafting film. It's not going to blend, not like you can on pastel matte or on paper. Once you get your colour down, that's it pretty much. It's down. Oh gosh, have we got a Nellington now? Oh, hi Nellie. I'm not sure I want Nellie in here. We've got Nellie in here now, so she said she's going to be really good. So let's see. Yeah, so you can't really blend on film. It's more sort of planning it. You've got to kind of plan how you're going to be blending. And what I'm doing here, it's very, very rough at the minute. And I'm going to use my eraser, which is going to really help to kind of take out some of the highlighted bits and make it look like it's blended. But if you try and blend one colour into the other, you can't really push the pigment around. It's quite difficult to push the pigment around. So if I just come into here, just come on this side here, and I just put some of this pigment in here, and just bring that pigment in there. If I want to blend that through into another colour, I kind of have to work the colour in over the top. This is a little bit too sharp for me really, but I kind of have to work that pigment in over the top and they don't really mix. So on pastel mat you can kind of mix them and they'll mix together, and you can move the pigment around if you like. With these, it's not going anywhere. It's just there. It's on the paper and it's not going anywhere. You can get your paper stump out. It might, I haven't got a clean paper stump, but it might kind of just move it a little bit, but not that much. One of the good pencils for getting a kind of a blend on the film is a Luminance Buff Titanium, and that you can kind of go in and sort of smush it a little bit, but you don't get the same sort of blend as you would on pastel mat. Right, now, what pencil? I think I might use the burnt ochre. What have I done with my other pencil? Oh, it's there. So I think I might use the burnt ochre in here now, in places, just before I start to pick out some of the, although, where am I? Yeah, I think I'll do that, and then I think I'll use some of the Sepia 50 as well. Nellie's toe, yes, Nellie's toe is okay. You would have thought that she hadn't actually damaged her toe at all, because she kind of leaps in the air, runs around the garden. Even though she's on restricted exercise, it's quite difficult to restrict her. And she's the size of a baby grizzly bear. She's the most funniest thing in the whole world. This pencil I'm using is the Sepia 50%. And what's lovely about this is it's got a purpley tone, so it works really well with the orangey, ochre colours. So I'm just coming in here and just bringing in just a little bit of sort of, I guess, a bit of shadowy detail before I start to bring in some of the highlighty stuff, just to give it a little bit of shape and form. And these early stages for curly fur, you know, if you're doing them on pastel mat, if you're doing them on, you know, whatever surface you're doing them on, these early stages do look a little bit, what on earth is she doing type thing. And then half of these marks that I'm putting in here I'm going to end up rubbing out. So, you know, and at the moment it's kind of looks a little bit, I did a workshop on curly fur, and, you know, for sort of about an hour, people were sort of kept on looking at me as if to say, are you really, Bonnie? Has somebody kidnapped you and put somebody who can't draw in your place? Because you know, it can look pretty grim. So it's just all about just bringing in shapes, bringing in colours, and shapes is a big part as well of drawing curly fur. You know, kind of isolating those shapes, discovering shapes, you know, and not being too fussy about getting everything correct, because it, you know, it really doesn't matter. With curly fur, you know, the animal will move its head and the curls will change. The wind will blow a little bit and the curls will change. Where you've got to be quite careful is if you're drawing sort of like a spaniel or something like that, and some spaniels have sort of like a little top knot on the top of the head that is a specific shape. You know, that sort of thing you want to be capturing if you're drawing somebody's pet, because, you know, that's kind of part of their character. But a little alpaca like this, you know, these curls are going to change all of the time, so we don't need to worry too much. Let's go. Oh gosh. Bonnie, as double-sided graphics film is still awaiting stock until the end of August, could you use the one-sided? Yes, you could. You could, absolutely, Linda. I mean, a lot of the time I don't use the back, so yes, absolutely. I wonder if you heat the film and move the pigment. Okay, so that's a really good one, JL. So you've got to be quite careful with film. If you use heat on this film or on Polydraw, it warps. It's kind of okay, but it warps. My squirrel that I did, and I've had a colossal, I'm looking at it now, I've got an 8-foot banner, so I've got an 8-foot squirrel in my studio. It looks amazing. I used a hairdryer on that, and I did that on the Dur-a-lar, and that worked really nicely. And you can then move the more waxy pencils around on it, so that works really well. And then you could also use something like what are these ones? These are the Near Colour 2 Caran d'Ache Neo Colour 2, or you can use the Neo Pastels, and you can use them on the drafting film as well and create backgrounds, and that works really, really well. So I've got a couple of tutorials on Patreon that use those, and they do work well. Is that moving my microphone? Yes, go and... No, she's asleep. I'm wondering, how do you choose what paper to use for what piece? Why did you choose the gem? Okay, so, well, I chose the film for this one because somebody said last week, can we do something on film? So I thought, right, okay, yes, why not? And then I chose curly fur because texture on drafting film for me is by far easier than trying to draw something smooth, because you can use all of that subtraction technique and you don't have to worry about kind of getting all of the blending and everything beautifully in place. So if I was drawing leather, I'd always choose to use pastel matte for drawing leather, because I can get that lovely smooth texture, and I can also get sort of like that lovely graininess and everything that I've got on, you know, you get in leather. With animals that are really, really textured, film is a preferred surface because of all of the tools that you can use on it very easily, and you can use your eraser and everything on it, and it just works brilliantly. And it's like, I don't know, it's like going on a lovely holiday to the beach and just sitting there with your cocktail and drawing on drafting film, because you don't have, there's no tooth to contend with. You don't have to worry about tooth. You just, you know, you're just drawing away, and it's lovely. Are Nelly and Slipper related? They are sisters, so they share the same mum. Their mum is called Pepper, and she is a Newfoundland. I think I've got that right. I said Newfoundland before, and it's not Newfoundland, it's Newfoundland. She is a Lancia Newfoundland, so she's brown and white, and just sort of slightly less stocky than the usual ones that you see. And Slipper's dad is a cream standard poodle, and Nelly's dad is a chocolate standard poodle. So they're from the same. She's not a breeder, she's just a lady who's had 2 litters of puppies. And when I heard that she was having another litter, we just had to have another one, because Slipper's just been the most fantastic dog. And Nelly is hilarious. She's the happiest, she's always smiling, she's so cute, and she's just like a big she's lying under my desk now. Honestly, it's like having a grizzly bear under your desk. She's so funny. And then of course we've got Mad Vincent. And he's just completely bonkers. What's he doing now? I don't know where he is. I think he's outside, somewhere outside the room. He squashes himself into the smallest of spaces, yeah, he's a funny old thing. But he and Nelly are absolutely best friends. They're sort of like partners in crime, and they just go around destroying stuff together. So yeah, and then Slipper keeps them all in check. But Slipper's like the guard dog. She's, you know, she'll bark if anybody comes to the house, and the other 2 just sit there wagging their tails. So, hi Bonnie, just figured out how to chat on here. Oh, that's nice, Cheryl. Am I self-taught? I am self-taught, Joe. Well, as far as self-taught is, I don't know, as much as anybody else. I mean, I went to college when I was 15, and I did 2 years at college, having a miserable time, and just being made to draw really big things with paintball, painting really big things, or charcoal and stuff like that, and just didn't really get anywhere, and left with no place. I wanted to do a fine art degree, but I left with no place at all, and I ended up going straight into employment. And then I picked up coloured pencils in Christmas 2015, and I was doing adult colouring books, so animal colouring books. That's what I was doing, and I just absolutely fell in love with them. Really fell in love with coloured pencils, but didn't draw anything until actually I've got a printout I can show you. Oops. Have I got a printout I can show you? Have I put them on? Oh, I put them on the other thing. I'll show you in a minute. I didn't draw anything until I think it was March 2016. I did my first portrait, and I kind of just carried on drawing from then and just drew every day. And from my first portrait, which was pretty grim actually, I'll show you a picture because I've got it printed out. Oh, this is the burnt ochre, by the way. If you haven't got the Luminance, just use the Polychromos burnt ochre. The Luminance is slightly darker, but your Polychromos will be fine. Yeah, and then it just took off from there. And so everything that I'm doing today is just sort of me trialing things, working things out, you know, learning different techniques. I did a couple of workshops in 2017, you know, looking at different techniques. So there was the using watercolour as an underpainting, watercolour pencils as an underpainting I did in 2017. And then I did a portrait workshop as well, sort of using Stonehenge and, you know, layering all sorts of different colours and everything on there for human portraits. But I always think self-taught, are we all really self-taught? Because we're all on social media, you know, you look on YouTube. So the big influences from a huge amount of people that you kind of pick up anyway, you know, subconsciously. So I've probably got influences from an awful lot of artists, but just sort of put my own stamp on it, I suppose. You know, because you're never going to be the same as anybody else. You're always going to have your own stamp. Art is my hobby, however, I would love to sell... Oh, hang on a second. I find white pencils on white paper quite useless. Oh, don't use white pencils on white paper. That's the best thing to do. Just don't use them. Use different colours instead. And that's a really, really interesting. That's the interesting thing about drawing white animals on white paper. Because our brains just kind of get so bogged down with them being it's white, whereas actually the animal's very rarely white. You know, there's usually a huge amount of colour that's going on in the animal. You know, so I'll show you a little bit later. I don't know what time it's, 7:45. I'll show you a little bit later the grey horse that I did, and there are some very, very white areas in there, but I haven't used white. You know, I've used pinks and I've used blues. So, you know, it's about being really clever with your colour and being a little bit brave as well. You know, and I'll kind of explain when I show you the horse, because I started off and I was like, oh crikey, I've gone too dark. Art's my hobby, however, I'd love to sell prints of my work for charity online. What would you recommend is the best way to go about this? Carissa, I'd probably look at a print company that maybe be able to you scan your work, send them your the digital files, and then print your prints out and then send them on to you. You know, that's probably the best way to do it. You want, you know, proper archival prints, you know, and you probably would want to sign them as well. So, you know, getting somebody to print them and then posting them back onto you is a you know, a good idea to do that. I mean, if you go into it a lot, you might want to either purchase your own printer or use a print on demand service. You know, whatever sort of suits you really, but at the moment I'd find a printer that you can send to and they can print and send back on to you. What would be the alternative pencil if a different make to what you're using, Bonnie? As we all don't have the same pencils you're using. Well, so that's, yeah, colour always is a worry for a lot of people. If they don't have exactly the same colour as me, then you know, there's sort of like panicking and everything like that. All I'd say is just use something that's similar. If you, Karen Hull, the Australian artist, has a fantastic conversion chart on her website. It's not overly expensive. She's put a huge amount of work into it, and she gives you alternatives for all of the different pencil brands. So she has them all in a list, and you can see what a Prisma is compared to what a Polychromos is compared to what a Luminance is, all of that type of thing. So that's quite good actually, definitely to sort of like have to hand. But for something like this, if I'm using sort of like a burnt ochre in a Luminance and you don't have it in the Luminance but you've got it in the Polychromos, just use the one in the Polychromos. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference. Some colours don't translate very well. So the Sepia 50 that I've been using, this one, if you've got a Mars Violet in the Light Fast range, I'd use that. But there isn't really one in the Polychromos that's the same as this. So I'd use something like maybe even like a Nougat or something like that. Something that's not too reddy in the brown and not too greeny, so it's very, very neutral. Does rubbing out damage the film in any way? No, it doesn't. And I'm going to rub some of it out in a minute. So you really have to disengage your brain when doing it. You really do, Hazel, yes. I've always gone straight into detail on my drawings, which is so time consuming. How do I get into the habit of using colour and tone without bringing in details? Claire, what you can do is you can switch the detail off, so you can take it into Photoshop and blur it all, so there's no, you can't even attempt to do detail because there's none there. You've got to try and sort of envisage drawing from the inside out. So you've got to think beyond the detail, and you've got to sort of think, what am I drawing outside of the detail? You know, what's underneath? How am I? You know, what's underneath all of that detail? And it's just sort of shape and colour and tone. You know, so you can see at the moment what I'm doing is I'm just sort of picking out the just picking out these sort of like little areas of tonal values in here, and it's not looking particularly pretty, but it'll really reap the benefits later on, you know, when I start to bring in a few of the highlighty bits. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of this Sepia 50 into there. Just bring a little bit into there as well, because your details then will come later on, and it's much easier to put your details in afterwards once you've got all of the tones and everything in there. And that's the same on any surface that you draw on. Oh, thanks, Cheryl. Beth, could the slice tool be effectively used if using the hot press watercolour? Yes, Beth. Yeah, it can be really, really effective. But what you've got to remember is you're scraping off pig and then starting to work the slice tool, because then what you'll be doing is you'll actually be going through the pigment rather than hitting the paper. Because if you hit the paper, the likelihood is that it's going to damage it. You know, so you kind of need to avoid that at all costs. So it's just gently slicing through the pigment is quite a good idea. You can always start as well, if you're aiming to use your slice tool, you can always start with a layer of like buff titanium or ivory or something like that, so you've got a really nice surface to then go down towards with your slice tool. You see what I mean? Oh, Sue, that's not good. Oh no, it's quite cool here, which is quite nice. What Earl Grey tea are we drinking today? I've actually got water today. And you know, I've tried a few different Earl Greys recently. I've tried the Marks and Spencer's Earl Grey, which I don't really rate, I'm afraid. My favourite is the Twinings. Got to be said, it's the Twinings Earl Grey. I really do like that. Yeah. How are you with pastel pencils on pastel mat? I don't use pastel, and it's funny. I had a conversation yesterday about do you think I should start using pastels? And pastels make me quite poorly. Not feeling ill or anything, but they go straight to my chest and I lose my voice literally. And even when I was drawing the elephant and I was using the Pablos on the dark grey, I was getting to the point where I was losing my voice quite a bit. So I've got to be really quite careful with dust, and the pastel pencils are still quite dusty. I can't even use pan pastels, and I don't like pan pastels anyway, but I can't even use pan pastels because they're just too dusty for me. So but what I am trialling, and it's just arrived today, are some, I can't remember what they're called now. It's not charcoal, it's something else. And I want to do I'm going to do a few little sort of trials with those, because I'd like to use a different medium. So we'll see. We'll see. Watch this space. But pastels, I'm not sure. Just because I lose my voice. You know, so probably a lot of you will probably be saying, yay, try the pastels, but you know, it's if I'm losing my voice and it's going straight to my chest, then it's not very good. And then I worry about my dogs as well. So, you know, I have got an air purifier in my studio, but it's so noisy. You know, and I've got to be careful when I'm recording that I don't have like loads of noisy stuff in there. Right. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. If you were supposed to commission on drafting film without a frame, would you stick a piece of paper or card behind it as it looks like grease paper? Yeah, Laura, so what I do is I end up, I mount all of mine. And I would highly suggest putting a mount on it, or yes, fastening it onto, you know, something rigid, and always give instructions as to how to frame. You know, because if your client picks up the piece of drafting film and looks at it, kind of holds it up without paper behind it, it's going to look very, very different to how you sent the photograph. You know, so you've got to be quite careful about that, really. Right, I just want to darken up a few of these things, and then we're going to go in with we're going to rub it all back out again. Going to go right back down to the film and start again. Okay, so I'm telling you that we're going to rub it all out again, because, you know, if we do rub it all out, at least you'll know what to expect. So again, I'm kind of being quite sketchy here. I'm not being overly, you know, precious with where I'm putting all of the colours and everything, because this fur is quite woolly. It is quite wiry, you know, so I don't really need to worry about smoothness or anything like that. Right, okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in with, I'm going to use a little bit more of this brown ochre 10% just into these areas here. I'm going to come in over the top, and I'm using this sort of roundy effect, so I'm kind of coming in over the top of the other colours, and if there's any blending to be done, then this will kind of help. Luminance on the drafting film is really good at coverage, and it is really good at, you know, getting a semblance of blending. What it's not amazing at is lifting, when you lift it off. If you just purely use Polychromos, then they come off really, really easily. Right, okay, so now what we're going to do is Deborah, yes, it'll be on YouTube. And what I want to do is I want to do the whole piece. I want to finish the whole piece. Whether or not we finish the whole piece together, what I might do is I might continue to draw this as a tutorial and upload that to YouTube. Hi Bonnie, can you suggest a good colour pick app? I don't use a colour picker, to be honest, but I think there's one, well, somebody will comment in here, I'm sure. I think there's one called I don't know. There's one where you can type in the name of the pencil, and it will tell you what pencil colours you need, actual pencil colours, whether it's a Polychromos or a Luminance or something like that. So I'd go for something like that. I used Alpaca watercolour today as an underpaint, and it was not good. When I used water, I completely lost control of the details. Oh, okay. The Alpaca they're pretty good, and what's nice about them is that they're the same colours as the polys, so you can kind of mix and match. I maybe go in over the top and get your details back in with dry pencil. So what you can see that I'm doing here is I'm starting now to pull out the highlighty bits and actually create some form of sort of detail. And what this is going to help me do is it's going to help me create more shapes that I can then go back in and start to work on the shadows. I can then create more highlights, more shadows, more highlights, more shadows, etc., etc., until we end up with a lovely curly mop of hair. So yeah. Is your pencil collection still Isabella? It's not. No, it's so, do you know, it was an amazing, absolutely amazing. Emma first put out 50, and then she ended up extending it to 100, and I think she ended up with a wait list, and I'm not sure that she's going to do any more, I don't think, but you know, keep watching this space, because, and I think I might start a mailing list, because I've got some other things in the pipeline, you know, which might be of interest to some of you. Now, when you're using your Tombow, you can see you can take the pigment straight out. Oops, gosh, you can take the pigment straight out. But when you're using your Tombow, what you've got to be quite careful about is the pigment gets on the end of the Tombow, it just sticks to the end of the Tombow, so you've got to keep cleaning it off. And I usually have like a piece of paper on the side that I sort of rub it over the top of. And all I'm doing here is I'm using quite hard pressure, and I'm just bringing the Tombow in, and I'm drawing hairs. You know, I'm using it almost as if it's a white pencil. Doesn't matter if you take too much off, because you can go back in again. Now, if you've drawn your graphite on the back, then you will still see that coming through. So, you know, you might need to flip your paper over and get rid of some of that, but hopefully you should sort of like be obliterating that really. But you can get some really, really nice curl detail in here just with your eraser. You know, I like to use my eraser to begin with, rather than going in and using like the slice tool at this point. The slice tool for me is going to create all of those little sort of fine hairs, whereas the Tombow at this point is giving me really, really nice definition in curls and some of the texture as well. So I see this bit here, taking out this colour, I see that as adding a layer. So this to me is an additional layer. It's not really erasing, it's adding in the highlights. And I'm just sort of bringing, and I'm kind of following the reference photo, but I'm not really. I'm just sort of doing my own thing really, which I know isn't particularly helpful, but let's have a look. Hi Bonnie, just wanted to mention that Caran d'Ache Museum. Oh well, Neha, if you can get them, because they are gorgeous, gorgeous pencils. I use Van Dyke Brown in place of, something like that, Van Dyke Brown or Nougat or something like that. Brand new to the channel, but the picture caught my eye. Oh hi Delilah, how that's nice. What was she just saying? Was that some type of eraser? So this is the Tombow eraser. Bonnie, you're a very sketchy artist in the nicest possible way. Not sure what it means in the UK, it's been a while, but a sketchy person in the US is not a compliment. No, I am a bit sketchy actually, I think, Cheryl. Yes, lots of people will say that. Oh, that Bonnie Snowden, she's a bit sketchy. No, I know what you mean. It's funny because, you know, when you see my finished pieces, they look quite tight, but actually I quite like the looseness to begin with, and I think I've kind of worked on that a little bit, and I find it much easier to create my pieces with a more sketchy, freer feel to begin with. It's just, you know, I think it's, but I do like to be really, really controlled as well. You know, but I do find myself having to really slow down with things. If I've got a complicated area, I have a tendency to just keep on going da, 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 you know, and just slapping colour and everything on and hoping for the best. And I have to physically get myself to slow down. You know, I have to actually tell myself, right, slow down. What is it that you're doing? Because at the minute it's not working. You know, and that's just who I am, I suppose. I'm quite, I guess if I take one of those, whatever it is, those things you do when you work in the corporate world, which I worked in for quite a long time, you take those test things, I don't know what they call them now, and I'm a bit of an activist in that I like to just jump in, but then I also like to do a bit of research, but then I get bored of doing the research and then I just do whatever it was that I was going to do. You know, so I'll spend sort of like an hour researching something and then get bored and then go, oh, I'll just buy it. You know, so but I do like instructions, kind of, but then I'm quite good at sort of finding my own way. So I've just bought a new a new little trolley that I've got next to me, which is brilliant. It's got 3 stories and it's got some little hooks and stuff that I can put all my pencils and everything on, which is really good, but I had to make it myself. And there were instructions, but I kind of worked it out, I figured it out myself. So that was, you know, I'm quite good at doing that sort of thing. But yeah, I am a bit sketchy. So, and I'm kind of making things up as I go along. But you can see how we're starting. It's still looking a little bit ropey, but you can see how we're starting to, you know, to get some of that texture in there. It's starting to come together. But it's not going to happen, you know, overnight or really quickly. But once you start kind of pulling these highlights out and then going back in and getting your shadows and everything in, it is going to start to come together quite nicely, she says, with her fingers tightly crossed. No, it is true, it will come together really nicely. Oh, I'm just going to have a coloured pencil picker. Oh, brilliant, thank you. What's the best techniques for nostalgia? I seem to flip from them. Best techniques for nostalgia is layering and burnishing. You know, lots of burnishing, and the paper, even though it's quite thin, takes quite a lot of burnishing. That's what I would suggest with the nostalgia. Bonnie, I want to draw the Eskies on Fabriano extra white, but sadly my eyes are leaving me confused with the areas that are in the wood. Yeah, so you've got to kind of trust that your white animals aren't actually as white as what you think they are. And the best thing to do, if you're not overly certain as to what the colours are, is you can do like a little, if you've got a hole punch, you can just hole punch through a piece of white paper, and you can put that hole punch over the top of your printout, and then you'll be able to see actually how non-white your white areas are. If they are really, really white on your photograph, it could be that your photo is a little bit overexposed. You know, so you might need to either take more photos or just edit it a little bit in Photoshop or something like that. Right, so let's get a little bit more into here and into here, and then you'll see that there are some like really, really fine hairs in here as well, which we can put in. We can put those in later on. This hair isn't particularly highly textured. When I was doing the little pine marten, the tail was really, really textured, and all we needed to do with that was just put a load of pigment down and then use the slice tool to get all of the pigment in, all of the texture in. Whereas this hair here, they're all really quite soft curls, so it's just a case of sort of pulling those in and then working into the shadows again. Right, okay, so let's look at bringing in a little bit more colour. So I'm going to use that as well, actually. So I'm going to use back to the dark sepia. Let's have a look here. Let's look a bit with Vinny. Slice tool malfunction. Ah, right, okay. What sort of museum mackerel do you recommend? Karen, I would say definitely the white. If you can get hold of the white, then that's perfect. Have I ever tried using pencil solvent? Claire, I have. Yes, the only one that I've used, and I don't now use it at all. I don't find I need to use it. I don't need to use it. But I used the Zest It, and it was the worst experience of my life. Well, it wasn't. I've had far worse experiences, but I won't go into those. But it's the smell. And the smell, sadly, caused me to have the most horrific migraines. But I'm very smell sensitive anyway, you know, so I can't use it. I can't have it anywhere near me. It's absolutely disgusting stuff. They say it's a pleasant citrus aroma. Well, it's disgusting. I know a lot of people use it, and I know a lot of people use it very successfully. I know a lot of people use it because they feel it's a shortcut and it makes things quicker. you know, and if that's how you want to use it, then, you know, that's how you want to use it, and it's fine. I had a very interesting conversation, I don't know whether I spoke about this last week, with the guy that's on my Patreon, and I was worried about using Zest-It and it having an effect on light fastness of pencils. And that wasn't one of the reasons why I don't use it. The reason I don't use it is because it gives me migraines. But my worry was, how would it change the light fastness of pencils? And this chap is absolutely amazing, and he does he tests surfaces, and he, you know, looks through a microscope at stuff and all of that type of thing. Anyway, he came back to me and he said he's done some testing, and the mineral spirits don't affect the light fastness of pencils at all. You know, so that's really good news for those who do use the solvent with their pencils. But I don't use it. I don't like it. I don't like the effect it gives. It's probably a little bit like the dog in the manger type thing, because I can't use it. I don't want to use it. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. But I don't need to use it. I can blend and everything without using solvent, you know, and I'm happy with what I'm doing. So that's, yeah. So here all I'm doing is I'm then going to go back to the burnt ochre, and I'm just going to start to bring in a little bit of this burnt ochre into here. It's maybe a little bit too orange, but Vinny, you're going to have to stop whistling. I think the slipper's lying across the door and won't let him in. So I'm just using this in here, and there'll come a point in this drawing where we slow right down and we start to actually add some really nice fine detail, but we're not at that point yet, sadly. Sorry. How do you change the rubber in the Tombow? Oh, that's an easy question. Right, just put these down. So you change the rubber in your Tombow by pressing on the end, and it kind of opens the thing, and you just, oh look, I've only got that much left. And then I don't know where, I've got some more somewhere, but you get refills, and they're kind of about that long, and then you just shunt that back in and squash it down, and then let go of the bottom, and it's there, and that's it, dead easy. And you tend to get refills with your Tombow, so that's quite good. I love your sketchiness. Thank you. How do you store my pencils? So I have a load of drawers with quite a lot of pencils in there. I tend to get multiples of the pencils that I use a lot of. You know, so I might have sort of, I don't know, 10 of a certain colour in drawers. And then I've got like a little trolley with 2 Lazy Susans on it. And jars in the Lazy Susans, and the jars are all, I got my daughter to do it for me, they're all colour coded, so all my orange pencils are in one jar, all my blues in one jar, all my reds in one jar, and I've tried to be quite good when I've finished doing a drawing, putting everything back, you know, into the same jars. So, and then I've got this other trolley that I've just bought, which has got it's on wheels, and it's got these, look, I don't know if you can see that, it's got these things, oops, these little holders, and I can just attach those on. It's got some little hooks on there as well, and it's got a top bit where I can, when nothing's going to roll off, which is great, because everything tends to roll off and go on the floor, or the dogs knock it off or something. The Pine Martin Bonnie, are you doing? I will do Josephine, just I don't know when, but I will definitely. Would you be using your Tombow as much if you were doing this on pastel mat or white paper? So if I was doing this on pastel mat, I would be using my putty eraser. I'd be using my putty eraser rather than the Tombow, because the Tombow doesn't really work very well on the pastel mat. So I'd be using my putty eraser just to lift out these lighter areas. That's how I would work on this. And I also, on the pastel mat, use the magic tape. That's a great one for doing curly hair on pastel mat. So that's what I would be doing there. Zest-It has one that's not scented now, but it's basically still, no, I'm not, I'm not really interested in using it. I just don't like it. I don't like what it does to the pencils, and it makes it sort of like move around like paint, and I like my pencils as they are. I must admit I am a bit of a purist, I have to say, but you know, so I'm happy with using what I'm using. I suffer from severe anxiety and depression, and my hands aren't always steady when I'm cutting or colouring. Do you have any tips on how to minimise the shakiness and have better control? I wonder if you could get some of those pencil grips. You can get sort of, you know, for people who have got arthritis and stuff like that. I've heard that they can be quite good. They make your pencil much fatter and maybe give you like a bit better control over them. You know, the other thing to do is, I guess the more you try to control, the worse it might get. So kind of go do some more sketchy things. You know, work with what you've got. You know, more sketchy, sort of loose, you know, drawings and everything might kind of help you. But also, you know, if you've got the severe anxiety and depression, you know, something to kind of, even something like a colouring book or something like that, you know, to kind of help with that mindfulness, to help keep your hands busy and your mind just busy enough so it's not sort of wandering off, can again be really, really helpful. You know, and always, obviously, you know, if you need help, always get help. You know, really, really important to you know, ring somebody, or you know, get professional help or something like that. It's very, very important. Does anyone else see a girl's face below the right ear? Probably. Oh yeah, here. Is it there? I don't know. Do you turn down commissions if you don't get provided a decent photo? I've never turned down a commission yet, actually, Nicole, and I should do. I really should do. I have just bought this new software, which has been, I have to say, a bit of a godsend, and it was from a fabulous photographer friend, Ruth Hoyt. I think Ruth's on here today. I don't know, but she introduced me to the Topaz. And it's actually been really, really good. I can enlarge, you know, if you get like a good photo but it's like the size of a postage stamp, I can now enlarge those and keep the quality, which has been amazing. You know, so there's certain things out there that you can actually do to make your photos better, and I'm certainly getting better at doing that. You know, so Sepia, you're going to have to move because Vinny wants to come in. Sepia, move. Come on, Vin. She lies right in the middle of the door and doesn't let anybody in. And he stands outside crying because he's scared to jump over her. She'll bite him. So what time are we on? We're 8:15. So I'm going to do a little bit more erasing. I know that this isn't looking the most beautiful just yet, but I promise you, the more we work on... Hi, Vinny. No, you're going to have to move, darling. Good boy. The more that we kind of work on these areas, the more it's going to look like curly fur. I mean, it's not looking so bad. It's not looking so bad at all. But we just need to kind of work into these areas. You know, just does take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to use my Tombow again. And I can bring a little bit of the slice in as well before I bring... I don't know, do you want to see the grey horse? I can show you the grey horse and kind of talk you through a little bit of what I did. No, not allowed to cry. It's been a very bad boy today. I had my lady came round to do bow. I have somebody who does bowen every week, and Vinny, he just loves everybody that comes into the house, and basically he was just leaping all over, and I was laid on the bed, and he was coming and licking my face all over, and he's just a bit mad. He likes to be the centre of attention. That's the problem. Oh yes, there you go, Ruth. Yeah, yes, we all love topaz. We're all big fans of topaz now. I used it on the photograph of the grey horse that I've just done because it was a fabulous photo, but it was really small, and it made a massive difference. I was able to enlarge it and improve on the quality of the photograph as well. It was absolutely brilliant. Okay. So let's just take some of that out there. Oh, you've got to check your dogs, and it is my dogs. Oh dear, yeah, my naughty dogs. It's Vincent. Is the little puppy's down here. She's just she's laid flat out under my drawing board. Slippers laid upside down in the doorway, and it's Vinny who's the pest. Bless him. Right, so it's just a bit more in there. So this is all sort of like preliminary work really before we get into the getting all of those sort of curls and everything in. But let's just bring a little bit of a slice in as well, and then you can kind of see what that does. And then, yes, Ruth, you're very welcome to share the link. Thank you. And then I can bring the grey horse if you want to see that. You might not want to see it, I don't know. So I'm going to use my slice tool. So this is the new one that they have. This is the manual slim pen cutter. And I'm just going to kind of bring it in. You'd probably be able to hear that. Definitely try the pencil grips. Oh yes, do that, yeah. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to, don't know whether you can see this, but it's bringing in some of that nice texture into there. And what will happen is I'm actually going into the film as well. So when I come and try to put pigment in over the top, it's going to miss it out. So I am going to get some of that texture in there, which is quite nice. And I can bring in, this is really nice on the film. Very easy to use on the film. And you can see that we're kind of getting into the areas in here as well. Still got a lot more pigment to go in. But kind of getting these little areas in relatively quickly means that we can work in between them. So just do a little bit more in there, get a bit more into there. You can see I'm using my fingers to wipe the pencil dust away, which I shouldn't really. I should use my brush. And I also should have my hand on something, which I haven't got either, which is a bit naughty. So there are areas here that are actually starting to look quite nice, even though we've still got a lot of work to do. So here, we're starting to see a little bit of hair kind of coming in over the top. Now, once you start to get this sort of an effect, your brain then takes over and your brain goes, oh, that looks like hair. And then you're like, yeah, it looks like hair, brilliant. And usually what happens is I'll end up with a piece like this, and then I find it much easier to work on other pieces. So I could come into here and add in a little bit more darker into here. And I'm thinking, oh, well, actually, I'll just make this one look like that. And half the time I'll end up with something looking great, and it'll just be from pure accident of putting a certain mark on a paper or a certain pressure. Coming here, I can now start to look at this area and make it look like the hair coming in underneath, and then I've got this bit coming in there, and I can just put an extra little bit of shadow in there, and you can see where it hits, where you've got the slice marks, you're going to get, it's not going to add the pigment. Which is great. So then it's starting to give you a little bit of form and a little bit of depth. And let's just, this bit here I'm going to do quite dark. So then I can start to bring those little tiny little bits of detail in. And then I can bring my slice in again. I can just bring a little bit of hair going in over there. A little bit of a highlight in there. Bit more of a highlighty bit in there, coming in and just put a little bit more in there. Okay, let's wipe that away, and then I can go even, this is quite black in there, but I can then just dot in a little bit darker It's going to miss out those little hairs, and it's going to start looking like layered hair, you know, which is what we want. And you know, getting the tones in there, getting the colours in there, everything like that first, and then coming in and putting these sort of smaller details in, really makes it easier. Just coming around there, a little bit more of that orange. Okay, I'll slice that out again. So this slice is working really nicely on the film. So we can kind of then start to work on all of the other bits, you know, and you can then start to, once you've kind of got a little bit of an overall idea of what you're doing, you can then start to pick a curl and then work that curl up. And the more that you do, and the more that you add your slice in there, a little bit of Tombow in there, a little bit more colour, you then start to actually get you know, it's like, oh, these curls are coming now. These looking all right. Whereas 5 minutes ago they just looked like sort of blobs. They're actually starting to look a little bit like hair now. You know, and that's what kind of spurs you on, really. You know, so it's starting to kind of come together a little bit more now. Nellie's toe is okay. It's okay. Do I sit on a special cushion or have a special chair? I have it is called a Secret Lab chair. It's amazing. I can change it to all sorts of things. And then I have this sort of cushiony thing. I'm supposed to be sitting on it, but I actually have it behind my back, which is great. Bob's, blah blah blah. I think Bolin Secret Labs. Yes, it's Secret Labs chair. Honestly, it's a fabulous chair. It is a fabulous chair. Right. Okay. So I'll just quickly bring the horsey in to show you. I'm just going to move this little chap. So I think he's looking all right. I think he's looking okay. We can carry on next week and bring some more colour and everything in there. So you stay there, Vincent. There we should be. No, I'm not sure. I might have to take this off the board actually. Take this off the board. Just bring it in under here. There we go. Just focus him. There we go. So hopefully you can see the lovely Mo. So this has been a real joy to draw, I have to say. I've just really enjoyed drawing him. Nellie, just go past her, she won't bite you. Go on, good girl. Yeah, he's been a real pleasure to draw. What's been lovely about it is, and what not terrified me, but what I was worried about was, I obviously started on this area first. So I did his eye first, and then I worked at the ears and the forelock. And then I kind of worked into this area here. And when I worked on this area here, without the muzzle, I was like, oh God, he's looking too dark. It's much too dark. I couldn't get this bit light enough, this bit light enough. I was like, oh gosh. But then when I brought the muzzle in and I got all of this pinkiness coming in down here, it brought the whole thing together. And then it was like, no, actually, it wasn't too dark at all. I got it exactly right. And then bringing this the dark area in down here and the dapples and everything, this bit down here has been really nice to draw, and I'm very pleased with how it's worked out down here. There must be about I'd say about 4 layers in here of pencil, and I've just used my pencil. See if I've got some. I've got a bit of a cold where I can kind of give you a bit of a demonstration. All I've done is I've kind of used my pencil like that. just in the direction of the hair. So I haven't gone into huge detail, and I haven't tried to really blend it and smooth it. I've left it looking, it does look quite grainy actually, but I really like the effect that I got from it. And then the other thing that I did to get all of these little dappley effects, I just used my putty eraser. So just my putty eraser, kind of in a little bit of a point, and then just bringing it in and taking out a few little sort of like hairs. So I get a dapple, and then I come down here, and then I put in another little dapple, and that's basically how I've done it. And then up here, where this is sort of like really pale here, this is the new Luminance pink white that I've put into here, and I've kind of mixed it in with a little bit of the it's probably this one actually, the cold grey one, and use those two. Down here I've just used, I think it was pink white again and cold grey one, and maybe 2 layers on this bit here. That's it. I mean, the nose band and all of the leather work, there's obviously a lot more layers gone into there, but not a huge amount, I have to say. But this is the pastel matte board, so it is much smoother. And if you can get the pastel matte board, I would highly recommend, if you're using coloured pencils, I would highly recommend the pastel matte board if you can get it, because it's just, I mean, there's no grit on there at all. You know, it's a really lovely surface. And a lot of people say, oh, you know, how do you keep your surface so clean? And my studio's full of dogs and it's quite dusty. So every now and again, probably, I don't know, maybe every hour, I'll just come in and just dab around the surface with my putty eraser and just kind of dab any dust or anything like that. And then I always keep it, if ever I move away from my desk, I just keep it covered up, because anybody who's watched my elephant tutorial on Patreon, one of the videos, you will see that Vincent has come in and just gone like that and put his nose right in the middle of the drawing. So there's a big wet Vincent nose mark. Well, that's okay with something that's destined to be a tutorial rather than a commission, but on a commission I've got to be really careful. Nobody wants a beautiful drawing of their horse with Vincent's nose mark right in the middle. It's just not a good look at all. So yeah, I hope that this week has been useful. I think my son's back, so the dogs are likely to start barking. But I hope this has been useful. We will carry on with the little alpaca next week. If you want to carry on your own, all I would say is keep doing what we've been doing tonight. Keep adding pigment, keep with your Tombow, everything like that. And I will see you again next week for part 2 of the alpaca. Thanks ever so much, everybody, for joining me, and I'll see you next week.